Oh my goodness. Okay. Take two. Hi, everyone. And hello. Welcome. Thank you so much. I'm really excited about this. When the board asked if we had anything planned for Black History Month, it kind of felt like I was scrambling, but I am so excited to be talking to Dallas Logan today. This is the first in what I hope is a series of interviews with prominent Black photographers. And I mean, Dallas, you know, I love you. I am a huge fan of your work, so I'm super excited to be talking to you today.
Well, thank you for having me.
As people are joining the live, can you tell us who is Dallas? What is it that you do?
My name is Dallas J. Logan. I'm a beauty and fashion photographer currently based in Los Angeles, originally from New York, and I'm of Cuban descent. I've been shooting commercial fashion and beauty for the better part of 30 years.
That's a really long time. So, of course, I mean, after all that time, of course, you're absolutely amazing at what you do.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for having me. I don't normally do interviews, so...
I like to think that I'm special.
Yes, you are.
Again, I mean, I love you. I love your work so much. I'll be honest. And I think I've said this to you before. The first time that we ever interacted was on Clubhouse. Mm-hmm. And I thought you and Day were kind of mean.
Okay. We talk about that. So what do you think we're mean?
So again, the first time we ever interacted was on Clubhouse. And I think part of the issue with social media is that you only get momentary flashes of who a person is, right? Mm-hmm. So we were in your Clubhouse room, Light is Light, which you do 3 times a week. And I think the topic was a pretty contentious one, right? We were talking about, I think a lot of people feel like younger photographers and newer photographers have a sense of entitlement when it comes to the industry. And they feel like younger photographers don't really want to put in the kind of work, or they don't have the same work ethic that people who have been in the industry for decades do. And so I came in, I think, partway through the conversation, and I chimed in. We were talking about mentorships, okay. I believe it was. And a lot of people were saying they didn't want to do mentorships, or they didn't want to mentor younger photographers because they felt like the work ethic wasn't really there. And I chimed in and I said something to the effect of, it's really difficult, I think, and intimidating to reach out to older photographers for a mentorship or to ask about an apprenticeship or something of that nature, because conversations like that one make it seem like there's no really safe way to approach older photographers. And I know that like the tagline for the room is leave your feelings at home, but it felt like everyone was in their feelings when I said that.
Every week, 3 times a week, they come in there in their feelings. But what it really boiled down to is the older photographers really have a lot to learn in the aspect of the game has changed. And because the game has changed, a lot of the rules have changed. And a lot of us like to stick to the older rules because that's what we've been through. And we had to learn to reprogram ourselves. Because a lot of the older photographers weren't releasing information, and the younger photographers had to find their own way. And my partner and mentee, he was a mentee at one time, he told me the reason why younger photographers are doing what they're doing is because the older photographers aren't passing on the information. So how can we as older photographers be mad when we're not giving them the information? They have to figure it out on their own. And that really stuck with me, because I can't be mad if you can't cook, and I was your father and I didn't teach you how to cook. How can I be mad that you don't know how to cook? And you figured out the microwave. Like, we don't cook in the microwave, we cook on the stove. It's like, well, the microwave has been doing good for me all this time. You didn't show me how to cook. So that's the analogy that I give when it comes to dealing with younger photographers. And because digital photography has changed the game and made the entry level lower, they didn't have to go through the through the trials and tribulations that we had to go through dealing with film. Because to be a photographer back in the day, you had to know chemistry, you had to know geometry, and you had to be a little bit of calculus, and you had to be some type of artist to get a photograph. You don't have that now. So it's like these kids are picking up these cameras, and they're becoming better quicker. And we, of course, listen, I've been doing this now. You're going to come along and start. Of course, I'm going to be pissed and bitter. I'm not showing you shit. And of course, the younger photographer says, well, I don't need you. I'm taking amazing photos. So there you have it. So why should I mentor under you when look at my dope ass photos? And it's like, and there you have it. So that's what the argument becomes, because what begins to happen is the younger photographers started making up new rules. And it was messing up the rules of the old, and they don't realize what was going on. So we talk about, let's say, licensing and usage. They don't really know what that is, or they don't understand the business the business sense of photography, because we never taught them. So they made up the rules. So they have a photo shoot and say, I'll give you everything. And we're like, you do realize that your assets are your photographs. You shouldn't give it all away. Well, why? I don't need them. So now we're at a point where a client will come along and I'll say, you get X amount of photos. And they'll be like, well, that guy said he'll give me all the photos for a cheaper price too. And it's like, it's a hard competition right now.
I think that's part of why it's such a contentious topic. It feels like mutually assured destruction, because the younger photographers are not picking up the skills needed to make photography a business, right? They're picking up a lot of the technical knowledge on YouTube from books like yours. They're picking up how to take a photo, but they're not picking up how to sustain a photography business. And at the same time, older photographers are retiring. They're not wanting to maybe work as often or as consistently as they have done. And all of that knowledge, it feels like it's falling by the wayside, at least to me.
Correct. You're absolutely right.
Which I think is part of why despite thinking that you were mean at first, it's part of why I kept coming back to the room, because I think that the system of like apprenticeships and mentorships has really fallen by the wayside, especially during the pandemic, which is incredibly unfortunate, because I mean, I can't speak for other photographers, but as a millennial, I want to learn. I want this to be my career. I want this to be my livelihood. But I feel like it's incredibly difficult to reach out to someone of your status, or someone like Day, or someone like Tanya or Loretta or Char, and it feels kind of intimidating to reach out to them if you have no prior interaction with them. And so now you have one of the largest active rooms on Clubhouse, over 37,000 members.
Right? I was surprised.
And I mean, I feel like it's because so much of the room, even though topics get a little spicy sometimes, I feel like so much of the room is dedicated to making people better photographers and better business owners.
Yes. And lots of times when we get to discussion of business, the numbers start dwindling. Nobody wants to talk. That's the unsexy part of photography. Nobody wants to talk about the business. Or secondly, a lot of people want a formula. We were in the room last night, and this gentleman wanted to know, how do we price a shoot? And so I'm giving him a formula. He says, well, how do you do it? I'm giving you the formula. And he's like, well, so I should use those numbers? It's like, no, I'm using these numbers as a example. He says, what numbers would you give me? I don't know your numbers. It's not that way. So I find that people want an easy fix instead of taking a moment to actually do the research. And that's one of the arguments that we really get into. Having the younger photographers take a moment and do the research in order to get it right, because today's society, they don't want to read. They don't want to do the research. They want me to give you a formula, and here you go. Now, I can give you a formula, and I can get you to that one photo shoot. But what happens when the next one comes along with different parameters? If I gave you the formula, you would know what to do. But if I give you the answers, you're going to keep applying the same answer to different parameters, and the results aren't going to be the same. So that's another issue we have for photographers. Because I remember having a student one time, and I'm like, well, why are you coming with these questions to me? She said, and I quote, why should I go looking it up? I can just ask you for the answer. And it's like, it can't be that way, because that I would do a grave disservice to you if I was to be a teacher and that became your mentality. And every single time I start with a younger mentee who's new, it's always that first fight. You know, just instead of I'll make them think for the answer and they just want me to give them the answer. And those two parties never meet well in the middle.
I feel like that's something that you've said before. The fastest way for someone to lose you as a mentor is to just demand the answer as opposed to
Not
putting
doing
in the work.
Exactly. And that's how my generation is. We can all my generation give you the answer. I can tell you how to shoot a photo, I can tell you how to compose an image, I can tell you how to process. But that's not making you the proper artist. I need you to become a better you. I don't want you to be a mini me. I don't want Adri to come and say, I want to shoot like Dallas. That will do you no justice. I want Adri to be the better Adri.
And I think that's part of, one of the more intimidating things about looking for a mentor. There seems to be a really pervasive belief that your mentor has to be someone that does the same thing as you.
It doesn't have to be at all.
You're better. I feel like I, as a portrait and street photographer, would have far more to learn from you as a fashion and beauty photographer than I would from someone who is also a street photographer. Not that I wouldn't have anything to learn from them, but if we're doing the same thing, at some point it feels like I'm just going to be mimicking your work.
And that can be the problem sometimes. I find that when people come to me, and this is another site, sometimes a mentee doesn't know where they want to go. So they'll come to me and it says, it's always a line of communication, asking questions. And I said, what type of photographer do you want to be? And I go, I want to be a fashion and beauty photographer. And they'll go, I like your work, and I like Day's work, and I like Loretta's work. Okay, now we move us from, let's go beyond us. Who else is out there? There's nobody. So it's like, okay, you don't know what this is yet. So then we'll start this path, and we'll start talking about photography, and they'll start showing me portrait work, and they'll start showing me portrait photographers. And when I try to teach them fashion, it's not hitting properly. And I go, do you really want to do this? Because it's a different discipline. The retouching is different, approaching of light is different, all this stuff. They're like, nah, I don't really want to do this. So the question becomes, well, why are we here? Well, I said that because you're a fashion and beauty photographer, and I thought that's what you want to hear. And it's like, no, I want Adri to be the portrait photographer or the architect photographer, and I have to meet you where you are so we can then walk the journey together. Again, another grave disservice. When I do the workshops, I have ladies like workshops, and what happens is the very first thing I say in the class is, if you're coming here to shoot like me or light like me, I have to refund your money. I'm going to take these techniques and I want you to apply it to what you're already doing, because that's going to make you better. If I make you shoot like me, or if I make you light like me, you're going to become our competition. And they'll go, well, he does it exactly like you, so, and a cheaper price, so that's no good. And it messes you up as an artist. So, yeah.
I think that's one of the things that I love the most about your book, which you were kind enough to give me for Christmas. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I am obsessed with it. I'm not even halfway through it yet, but I love it so much.
Well, I'm happy you did. Thank you very much.
One of the things that I love the most about it, though, is that it doesn't, and you've said this before, but it doesn't require you to go out and spend thousands of dollars on new gear. It exists to make you, the photographer that you are, better with the gear that you have.
Yes. And you don't have to buy tons of equipment. And again, if you have the book and you don't have a particular item in the book, at that point, now you start thinking, if I don't have this item, what can I do to replace it with what I have? A lot of people don't have V-flats, which is a very expensive item. And they'll go into the book and they see, I have a black V-flat, and it's there for a reason. And I said, think for a moment. And they'll call me up and say, I don't have any V-flats. What do I do? Let's think for a moment. Why is that V-flat there? Why is that white V-flat there? Or why is that black V-flat there? And they'll think for a moment, oh, because it does ABC. So if you don't have a V flat, what would you put in its place? Well, what if I get white poster board? You took a moment to think, and we found something that could replace that V flat for you for now. But if I said just go get poster board, you're not thinking. But if you come to me and I know that you've exhausted all your information and you still don't figure it out, then I'm going to help you. So that's how that goes.
It's so funny that you mentioned V flats, because that's literally the exact thought process I went through. I got asked to do headshots for a really small college in West Virginia. When I say there was nothing in this town except the college. So I got there, my reflector wasn't big enough because it was an entire wall of windows, and they wanted headshots. So I needed to bounce the light off of something. My reflector's not big enough. There's a dollar store in town. What does every dollar store have? They have poster board and they have duct tape.
There you go.
We like jerry-rigged a V-flat out of really big poster board and duct tape. And you know what? It worked.
And that's the thought process of you taking the information, thinking for a moment. I'm not giving you any answers. I would have given you an answer anyway, but I'm not giving you any answers. And before you called me, you figured it out.
Now, I've only called you once on a shoot, which was incredibly embarrassing.
It's always the simple things that, and Adrienne, let me tell you, we do it. If we think the same way today, we have to go back. If something's not working on set or something's malfunctioning, we always think the most complicated thought first because we're in panic mode. So we think it real complicated, and most times, more times than not, it's always a battery issue.
Well, in my brain, I was thinking, okay, I spent hundreds of dollars on these lights. They're not working. It has to be like a catastrophic failure. No, the batteries in my remote died. And
and what I laughed. The very first thing I laughed, I said, check the batteries.
Absolutely wild. But I mean, I think that's also part of the book's design and like part of its appeal. I would have never thought to check the battery without calling you, but now that's always going to be in the back of my head. Like I said, the book feels like it's designed to change the way that you think when you're on a set or when you're working.
Believe it or not, photography is very linear when it comes to equipment. So if it wasn't the battery, my next thing would be, let's check the cord, because it's a connective thing. So we keep removing the connective things and do process of elimination before we throw the light out the window. Many times I've had people come at me and I have an issue with their gear. And everybody throw the gear away and buy something new. It's like, no, let's find the problem. It could be an old cord. It's not making a connection. Maybe you need to wipe your connectors. And eventually you will, using the process of elimination, you will find what the error is before you decide to buy new lights. So, yeah.
So I want to change gears just a little bit, since this is part of ASMP's Black History Month programming. And part of the reason that I really wanted to talk to you is because you talk about being Black, Afro-Cuban in the fashion and beauty industry a lot. We talked about this a little bit last night, but especially right now, it feels, to me at least, like mediocrity is being rewarded in a lot of editorial spaces. We talk about a lot of high fashion magazine covers that we've seen, and they're just not hitting the mark. As a Black creative who's been doing this for decades, like, is it frustrating to see that kind of mediocrity being rewarded when you had to put in so much more work than your white counterparts to get to where you're at?
Well, in any business, it could be corporate America, it could be the arts, it could be sports. It's not about the knowledge that you have. It's really based on a lot of the connections. And with the death of George Floyd, it revealed that there was a lot more Black artistry out there than before, which is amazing. And then when Clubhouse came on the scene, we were able to go into these rooms and meet a lot of these. I was able to meet a lot of my contemporaries and even some photographers that I looked up to. And when you began to hear their story, every story, if it was 10 stories, None of those stories were, I knew someone, I had a hookup. I just picked up the camera, and my best friend, she worked for Abercrombie and Fitch Marketing. So she just brought me in, and they didn't do the work that was needed to get there. So that's where a lot of us as Black creatives began to get pissed off, because it's like, we don't have those connections because we never developed them, because that just wasn't our life. I didn't live next door to somebody who would actually do marketing at Abercrombie and Fitch. So I would have to do the traditional route of presenting my portfolio, where, let me call my best friend. Hey, you got a camera, right? Come on down and shoot. And I guarantee you, if a lot of us had those opportunities, we would take them too. Impostor syndrome plays a big game, but a lot of the white counterparts take that imposter syndrome, throw it to the backside, where if I had that opportunity and I'd never done that before, the first thing I ask myself, am I good enough to shoot an Abercrombie and Fitch campaign? Is my work good enough? Can I compete with the likes of Patrick Demarchier or Bruce Weber, because that's who they were using, and those are big shoes to fill. So it became really, really frustrating, but at least we learned through Clubhouse and through some of these stories, we weren't getting in the doors because we weren't good enough. We weren't getting in the doors because we didn't have access to the right people. So that was good to know that I wasn't getting it because I was bad at what I do. Like that, I hope that answers your question.
No, it definitely does. And I think it's affirming for a lot of younger and early career photographers, because imposter syndrome is absolutely a thing. In the Black women photographers Slack, it comes up a lot when people are talking about losing their creative drive, or it feels like they're not really seeing any reward for all of the work that they're putting in. And at least for me, I know it really affirms that it's not the quality of my work that's an issue. Is there more that I can learn? Absolutely. But that's not why I'm not getting hired. That's not why we're not working on these campaigns or in these rooms and making these decisions. It's because from the very beginning, like, we were not set up to get to that outcome.
Yeah, absolutely right. Just like we're not set up, our first language is in finance, our first language is in business. A lot of the young photographers, a lot of the photographers of color, at least when I was coming up, we picked up the camera because we liked it. We never thought about it being a vocation because nobody ever taught us that. When I realized I was able to make money from this, I was in high school at a performing arts school in New York, and I was one of the kids that always had a camera, being on the yearbook committee and stuff. And a student asked me, "Can you take my headshots? I need photographs. I'll pay you." And I sat there like, I must have been 16. I'm like, "You'll pay me?" I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "Oh, okay." I took her photographs. She took them to her agent. The agent loved them, and then started saying, "Would you like to shoot for me? I can give you some other actors." I was like, "Oh, sure." And I started making this money, and I sat there flabbergasted, like, people pay for photos? It was never a thought process for me. I never thought, when I went down 42nd Street and I saw giant billboards of Calvin Klein jeans and all that stuff, that there was somebody who took that photograph and got paid for it. But if I had the learning that this vocation can be a job and making money, I would have went about it differently. I just wanted to just take pretty pictures and make myself happy. So when we're coming up as Black kids, we're told to get real jobs. The white kids are saying, this is a real job. So if this is the job you want to do, I'm going to follow you full throttle. We weren't taught that. And so by the time we decide we want to do this as a job, we're already in our 30s. And we're in our 20s, we're in our 30s, and we're already at a job that we hate. And it's like that, all that, and then your parents have put the fear of God in you and the fear of failure, that you're afraid to leave your job because that's all you know. As opposed to the white kids, it was like at 15, 20, 30, they've already been in it for 10 years already, because they were told this can be a real job.
And I think that is, I mean, I love my mom for a lot of reasons, but I think one of the things that I'll always be grateful for is my mom is a caterer and a chef, by the time I decided I wanted to do photography, she had already left her corporate job like 5, 6 years earlier to cook full time. And she had made it on the Food Network, and she had done all of these amazing things. She had already self-published her first cookbook. She had already done brand partnerships. She had a column in the Miami Herald, like all of these things.
Nice.
Really set up, I think, I don't know, a vision that like you can have a job that you love. You don't have to hate getting up and going to work in the morning. Exactly. And so when I told her, because I was already writing freelance at the time, and when I told her I don't love writing the way that I thought I did, her immediate question was, well, what do you love? Why are you doing something you don't love?
Yes. That's amazing. I wish more parents would be that way. Because what happens is the parents put their fears on their children, and it just gets passed on and on. So when they come to us, we're dealing with damaged goods. And one of the first things we have to teach people is you can do this, and you can be the best you can be. But we have to break the shackles of the fear, the generational shackles that you've had, and rebuild them.
So you mentioned him earlier, your partner, Day.
Yes.
So speaking of education and like teaching the next generation, you guys have a daily podcast, which sounds like so much work to me. I don't know how you do it, and photography and the Clubhouse room 3 times a week. It just sounds like so much work. But you do the daily podcast on Facebook Live. What, if anything, did you set out to accomplish when you started the podcast?
Another generational divide. My generation of photographers, we were taught to let your work speak for itself. And so for years, I've seen Bruce Weber's work for years. I didn't see what Bruce Weber looked like until maybe 25 or 30 years after the shooting of his work. But when the newer photographers came and we had social media and all that stuff, there now had to become a self-presence. So it wasn't just about my work. You now had to see me. So for a long time, Day, who's a hell of a lot younger than me, wanted people to see who I was. Wanted to see people to see who I was, because lots of times, a lot of people thought I was a white photographer. And he said, you need to do Facebook Live. You're doing the workshops. People want to see who they're giving their money to. Blah blah blah. I'm like, I don't do that. That is not my thing. So now we're trapped in the house for COVID. I'm sitting where I'm sitting now, and I said, let me just go out there and just talk. And I started a Facebook Live and just started talking. And then people started coming up and they were asking questions. It was like, oh, this is kind of fun. And then Day didn't even realize, he thought I was on the phone. So he's in the other room. He's like, what are you doing? I said, oh, I'm on Facebook Live. Come on and say hi. And I must have been out there the first time for like 3 hours. I'm like, this is fun. He said, see, this is what I wanted you to do. And then towards the end, or when the energy started going down, the questions started happening. When are you doing it again? Are you going to do it tomorrow? It's like, I'm not shooting tomorrow. Sure. And that's how it started organically. And here we are right now.
See, the older photographers can absolutely learn something from the younger photographers.
Yes, you're absolutely right. But what happened was the flip side of that was, we got I thought you were a white photographer. And it begged to ask, what does that mean? Why? What made you, but by just looking at my work, it was, what made you ask that question? What was that deduction? And it was because you shoot white. And I didn't understand what that meant. I didn't think I shot white. I just shot like Dallas. And then that opened up a whole can of worms. And it's been a hell of a journey understanding what that meant. So, yeah.
I think that's something that you had brought up a couple of times on Clubhouse before. You said you either heard, you shoot white, I thought you were white, or people would say, you have to diversify your portfolio.
That too. So, when you would look at a lot of photographers' work, we can tell a photographer's work regionally, and today we can really tell we can usually tell a photographer's gender, or we can tell a photographer's a photographer's race, merely by looking at their work. And they were showing me work that had lesser production value when they talked about Black photographers, and it was bothersome to me because it's like, you see how they shoot it like they don't even use lights. And look at they they shoot like they're poor, and it's like that's not the case. That's the actual style. I didn't have that style. So I merely because I didn't study that. So I was studying the white photographers because that's all I knew. If I had a chance to study the Black photographers, as you called it, my style would have been completely different. But it was for me a level of professionalism. So then the argument became that white people shoot professionally and Black people shoot unprofessionally. And it's like, that's not the case. It's just different. But it made me want to elevate the game that with my brothers and sisters, which is why I created the ebook. Like, yo, they don't think we can do this. They don't think we can go out there and compete with the Revlon campaigns and the Gucci campaigns and all that stuff because they don't see it in our work. So we had that discussion. So now I'm out in the field. I'm already a professional photographer, and I start being put up for campaigns. And then the agencies will be like, and see, we speak differently back in my time. So the line was, you need to whiten up your book. You have amazing work here, but we need to see a lot more white subjects in your book. And I was like, why? That's ridiculous. You can see I can do the work. They have to be able to sell you. It's the same thing when you go to buy a house now. You remove all of the remnants of the owner. And how many times you see these articles, I have a Black homeowner who had Black art on the wall. Her house was $150,000. You put up a white artwork in the same house. Now the house is $500,000. It's the same thing. And nobody wanted to have those discussions. And that's what we started to talk about on Facebook and the Daily Dose and on Clubhouse, because it's a real reality for us. And the white photographers were saying, well, no, it's really not that way. You're using a Black card and your work should stand by itself. And one of the biggest arguments we had were, we don't want handouts. Let our books go against book for book, artist for artist, and let a blind eye decide who should get the job. We don't want the jobs given to us like you had the jobs given to you. We just want the opportunity to have a chance to
It's so, I don't know, it's frustrating, but also absolutely hilarious to hear, like, well, you have to diversify your book, you shoot poor, or something like that. Some of the first photographers that I ever discovered, especially since I moved to Pittsburgh, Latoya Ruby Frazier, Teenie Harris, Gordon Parks, Jamel Shabazz. These are street photographers whose work I love. I am obsessed with it. And then you look at, I guess, more mainstream, more celebrated street photographers. The first person that comes to mind, a white person, is Ouija. I don't see what makes Ouija's work more elevated than someone like Jamel Shabazz.
Exactly.
What's the delineation?
It's the subject matter. And that's exactly what it is. It's a subject matter. And because of the death of George Floyd, they're allowing us to celebrate our Blackness now. So when we were told to make our books white or make it more diversified, now we're able to, as Black artists, embrace our Blackity Black. And that's so amazing. So again, here's a changing of the guards. I can't tell a young Black photographer who wants to enter the world of beauty saying you need to have white models. I don't have to say that anymore. You can shoot whoever you want. I'm sorry. You can shoot whoever you want. It's totally okay. This is a different time. and I hope the change stays on course.
I think it's so compelling that in the last few years, even the conversation about what we capture when it comes to Black subjects has changed. One of the themes that has become far more common, especially in the Black Women Photographers Collective, is the idea of Black joy. That was never something that people named before. It wasn't you sought or you set out to capture Black joy. The concept of Black people having fun, living their best lives, simply being Black, whatever that means.
Black
So
joy, Black love, Black power, Black excellence, Black expensiveness, Black excellence. No, they didn't want to. They wanted to see the struggle.
right.
They wanted to see the Harriet Tubman photos. They didn't want to see the Michelle Obama photos.
And I mean, there's a place for, if you want to call it gritty photography. It's a
Mm-hmm.
style, it's an
Mm-hmm.
aesthetic. I think it's definitely one that deserves its place. But for so long, the only images of Black people that we saw were Black people suffering and Black people struggling. And there's
Black
so
people
much
suffering.
more. There's so much more to the Black experience than being poor, being in pain. I feel like the most compelling image or the most compelling exhibition of Blackness for me is seeing Black people with girls. My parents are immigrants, so for them, like having gold in your teeth, that wasn't a thing that you did. That's what poor people did, because it meant you couldn't afford to go to the dentist and get your teeth fixed. So
Mm-hmm.
when I see Black people with grills, to me, that's like the height of Black excellence. It's the height of Black luxury. I want to see it. I want to see the gold jewelry. I want you to clink, take up space, make noise when you're in the room. I love everything about it.
And we had to learn, my generation of photographers had to learn to love that again, because those are all the negative things about us. I love afros now. I didn't before because it didn't come across elegant to me. It didn't come across rich to me. It didn't come across expensive because of all the shackles that were placed on my generation from the previous generation. So we were like, why are you putting that gold in your mouth? What the hell are you doing? But now Gucci's doing a campaign with it. Oh, now it's okay. So I had to learn to accept my Blackness, flaws and all, because that's who we were made. That's what made us who we are today. And again, my generation had to break those shackles and listen to the young people, and it was totally okay.
Time is just flying by. We only have about 20 minutes left,
I'm
which
all yours
is
for the next 20.
so one of the things that you talk about a lot, and one of the things that comes up a lot, is the concept of like mentorship, doing an apprenticeship or interning with a photographer. As someone, as a Black photographer that has been in this for decades now, do you feel, I guess, obligated to mentor, or does it just feel like part of the job?
I don't feel obligated to mentor. I feel obligated to make my people better. Mentorship is more than just me teaching you how to use your camera. Mentorship is also about teaching you to be a better you and taking those skills out into the field. Most of the times when I do have a mentor, if I had to break it down to percentage, about 20% of that is maybe based in photography, where the next 80% is based on making success and taking those skills and applying them. Because when I teach, when somebody becomes a mentor, it's more than just the lights. I now teach you how to handle the business. I now teach you what you need to succeed in this business. We talk about taxes. We talk about insurance. We talk about the etiquette of how you talk to a client. All those things come back because you're not learning these things. So what happens is I'll talk to a student who I can tell by the way they talk, they've never been mentored, and they have these ideologies locked in place. And I'll ask them a simple question. Let's say, for example, oh, she booked me and she had the nerve to say, she asked me she said my rate was too high. She had the nerve, and I had to get a piece of my mind. No, you didn't. And then you take the business. If you went to two companies and they both sold the Mercedes, the same exact Mercedes, and one Mercedes was $10,000 less, where do you think that person's going to go? They're going to go to the car that's $10,000 less. So when that client comes to you, they're asking you questions. If they can't afford you, they can't afford you, but you wanted to take it upon yourself to set things straight. That means nobody taught you, because that's a useless conversation. So those are the things we talk about when we talk about mentorship, because those things happen organically and you need to see it happen in real time. Because I used to work with Jill Greenberg, and I assisted with her, and I watched her maneuver with her clients, and it was like, oh, that's how you would handle that. I would know how to put an NBA player at ease to get a photograph. I never had to do that before, but I saw how she did it and how she finessed it and get the best photographs she needs to get. And it was like, oh, I get it now. So yeah, that's more what mentorship is about. It's not about the photography.
I don't want to harp on pricing too much because I know how much you love that particular topic.
Excuse me, hey.
I know how much you love that particular topic, but I think one of the most enduring lessons that I've learned from you is that your pricing doesn't have anything to do with any other photographer. And once you decide what you and your work are worth, like you never need to ask anyone about pricing ever again. One of the things that I get a lot is, you don't have any pricing on your website. I don't, because I try to make it a point to accommodate everyone that asks me or tries to hire me. You might only have $200 to spend on a photo shoot, but that doesn't mean that I can't work with you. You're not going to get 10 photos for $200.
Right. Exactly.
But I can absolutely make your budget work for the two of us. We can bring your vision to life. And I think that's one of the most important things that I learned in your room, because pricing, every time it came up, I had like an anxiety attack.
Believe it or not, even seasoned photographers still have anxiety attacks. I still have seasoned photographers calling me and discussing their budgets and me brokering their deals. So it's not, again, when you come to our room, we have photographers who've been shooting 2 weeks. We have photographers who've been shooting 22 years. We still go through the same problems. We still do. But again, we still need to teach the younger photographer the assets of their photography. Your photographs are your assets. And it hasn't clicked yet. Because they think I just press a button and I can put it on a digital card. It doesn't mean anything. So they're not giving their work value or worth. Because we can teach pricing. I can teach you pricing. I can't teach you worth. That's the hardest lesson, because that's something that's internal with people. And they like to base their worth on their gear. It's like, no, base your worth on your artistry. And that's a hard, hard lesson.
So before we wrap up here, is there anything that you feel like I missed? Anything that you want immortalized in this recording?
Well, I thought you was going to get spicy with me.
No, because I'm using the ASMP's Instagram page, so I don't want to get
it.
too reckless.
Okay, got it. No, I want the photographers, not even just the photographers, the creatives, to understand their worth and stop giving it away. Because it created a really bad food chain for all of us. Once the younger photographers start giving away their assets, people are coming to the older photographers expecting us to do the same. So, and that's not, and I remember I shot a family one time, and the previous photographer gave them everything. And I'm like, let me tell you why that doesn't work. Because now you don't have any incentive to buy anything else from me. After I give you all the photos and I did what you want, you can't come back to me 5 years from now and say, oh my God, you shot my grandmother back then and she's passed away. We need a photograph. And it's like, I gave you everything. So now you have all the power. Please stop giving your artistry away. Picasso's not giving his paintings, wasn't giving his paintings away. You had to buy it. Our photographs are art, and we have to treat it as such. If we treat it disposably, so will other people. That's it.
That makes all the sense in the world, to me at least.
Yes.
our photos, our art, it's the most enduring part of us, and to give it away feels like it feels like I'm giving a piece of myself away.
Exactly. I look at our photographs as our babies. I'm not giving you my baby for free. That sounds like baby trafficking. I'm not giving it away. I'm not giving you my babies for free. I put my blood, sweat, and tears into this photograph. It has to be worth something. And that's how I look at it. And I wish the younger photographers would start doing that. And when I mean younger photographers, I do mean photographers who are early in the craft, because you could be 45 years old and still be a young photographer. So it's about the time and energy that you put into the craft.
Absolutely. So, last question.
Mm-hmm.
Where can people find you? How can they support you?
Okay, you can find me on Instagram at I am Dallas J. Logan. You can follow me on Twitter at Dallas J. Logan. Let me tell you the reason why there's a J in there. When I was coming up, there was a basketball player by the name of Dallas Logan. So if you ever put in Dallas Logan, sometimes he would come up. So I had to drop the J in there. I have an ebook called Light is Light at a workshop as well. And you can get the ebook, which covers commercial beauty, editorial beauty, commercial fashion, editorial fashion, portrait lighting, as well as body lighting. And it's a book that teaches you how to do all that type of lighting. You can get it on my website at dallasjlogan.com/ebook. And I like to say this part. If you decide to buy the ebook, our relationship does not stop at the shopping cart. As a matter of fact, that's where it begins. So you have access to me with any and all questions.
I can vouch for that. That's absolutely true. Even the most ridiculous question.
Even the most ridiculous question, I'm there for you. A lot of my colleagues are now putting out these ebooks, but once the transaction is done, and they click buy or whatever, and it comes out the shopping cart, they're no longer associating with the person who purchased the book. And I look at it like this: if you took the time to buy that book for me, I can take the time to help you with it because you saw some inherent value in that ebook. So that's why I do it. That's what I do. That's what I do. What I do, and that's why we go the extra mile. And that's it.
Amazing. So before we go, can I get a quick pose from you for the video thumbnail?
The thumbnail. What do you need me to do?
I mean, you have a very broad range of expressions, so I'll let you decide.
I mean, I can give you my branding one, or I can just give you the professional one, whichever one you want.
I mean, we marketed this as an interview with Dallas, so give me Dallas.
I love that. You hear that, people? She said give her Dallas. So what do you want me to do? You want me to hold the face for like 3 or 4 seconds?
Yes, please.
You ready?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, AG. Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad you allowed me to do this interview because I'm being interviewed for my podcast in about a week or so. So I have to get used to being interviewed. I hate
practice.
It really is. I want to thank you so much for having me.
I want to thank you for taking time out of your incredibly busy schedule to talk to us. I know I reached out to you super last minute, but like I said, I love you. I love your work. I'm a fan of you as a photographer, but also you as a person. And let that be proof that first impressions are not everything.
So before you go, why did you think I was mean? Because of the way I spoke?
So to be fair, I believe it was Day who had replied to what I said in Clubhouse, but I thought it was you.
Was that about the microwavable photographer?
Yes, that's exactly what it was. And I think I took umbrage with the fact that you said microwavable photography, because this is something that I've said before, but everyone's art matters to them. So I always try to avoid commenting on like the quality of someone's work. You can talk about technical skill or whatever it is, but I never want to make someone feel like they didn't put effort into their art. So I took issue with that, and I think it turned into an argument, which is one of my issues with social media, right? You have no idea what someone's intention is on the other side of the screen. And so that really colored my first impression of you and Day. But then Day sent me a message on Instagram, and he was like, let me get your phone number. I feel like you and I need to have a conversation so we can clear the air. And that like changed my entire perspective. That's why I started coming into the room far more often. And I mean, the rest is history.
There you have it. Most things can be solved with the conversation. And that's
Like
what
this
it is.
one.
Like this one, exactly. Yeah, you're right. Solve it with the conversation, provided it soothes your soul. So I'm glad that they did reach out to you and remove the room from the situation, and because those rooms can put an energy into a situation that nobody's listening because everybody wants to be heard. So I'm glad you had that conversation with them. But
Well,
thank you so much for having me.
again, thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule to talk to us. And thank you
Yeah,
for everyone that watched. Again, if you don't have it already, I highly recommend checking out Dallas's ebook. It is a fantastic resource, and you get his phone number. So you get to begin a whole new relationship.
there you have it. Thank
Good
you.
night, everyone.
Have a good night.